Vector's third eye stalk twitched involuntarily as he stared at the holographic display floating above the council chamber's central podium. 300 cycles of intelligence analysis had taught him to expect the unexpected, but this was just insulting to basic logic. Let me get this straight. Senior Counselor Threws rumbled, her crystalline voice echoing off the chamber's biosynthetic walls. Earth, the third planet in the Sol system, has no orbital defense platforms, no particle shields, no quantum displacement fields, no asteroid-based weapons arrays, nothing. Correct, Counselor, Vector confirmed, manipulating the display with a practiced flick of his secondary manipulators. Their satellites are primarily for communication and observation, primitive chemical propulsion systems. We've detected no antimatter reactors, no graviton pulse generators, not even basic coherent energy weapons in orbit. Counselor Prin of Vashtinu species had mastered faster than light travel before humans had discovered fire, leaned forward in her suspension field, and yet in the past 200 cycles, 17 separate military operations have been planned against Earth. 7 care to tell the Council how many were executed? Vector's feeding tendrils curled in what his species used as a grimace. 0, Counselor 0, Threws slammed one of her 7 appendages against her seat's armrest, causing several junior counselors to flinch. Do you comprehend how statistically impossible that is? The Cathar Vex Dominion conquered 47 systems in a single solar rotation. The Celthian corporate collective has strip-mined entire quadrants. The Yarvo clans, those raiding scavengers, can barely resist a defenseless cargo transport, and you're telling this Council that a planet with, what did you call it, pointy metal tubes that throw smaller metal pieces using controlled explosions has never been successfully invaded? The humans call them guns, Counselor, and yes, that is precisely what I'm reporting. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of clicks, whistles, harmonics, and electromagnetic pulses, each species expressing disbelief in their own particular way. Vector waited, his data pad clutched in his primary grippers, feeling the weight of 300 sets of eyes, optical sensors, and thermal pits focused on him. Throws raised an appendage for silence. Analyst Vector, you have 48 standard cycles to solve this mystery. Find out why nobody attacks Earth. Find out what we're all missing, because I refuse to believe that an entire galaxy has developed collective phobia of a species that still uses fossil fuels for transportation. Vector's eyes drooped. He had a very bad feeling about this assignment. The archives level of the Galactic Intelligence Hub smelled like ozone and recycled atmosphere, combination that made Vector's olfactory sensors ache. He'd been down here for 6 hours, and his colleague, Gerald, a 4-armed Nephilim with an unfortunate habit of stating the obvious, had been hovering nearby the entire time. You know what happened to the last analyst who investigated Earth too closely, right? Gerald asked her, vocoder crackling with what might have been concerned or amusement. Hard to tell with Nephilim. Enlighten me, Vector muttered, scrolling through the database index with growing frustration. The search parameters kept returning corrupted files, redacted reports, and classified documents that required security clearances he didn't have. requested a transfer to the outer rim. Said he'd rather catalog space fungus on barren moons than look at another human. Data file, just up and left 3 cycles. Into his research, wonderful truly. Inspiring, Gerald's upper arms crossed, while her lower ones continued. Organizing data crystals, I'm serious. Vector, there's something off about the Earth files, half of them are sealed. Under psychological hazard protocols. You know how rare that classification is? I've seen battlefield recordings that don't carry that warning. Vector paused, one eye's talk swiveling to focus on his colleague. Psychological hazard for what? Information. Apparently, Gerald pulled up a secondary screen. Look, I pulled the accessible files for you. 17 attempted operations against Earth spanning 2 centuries. Every single one has survivor testimonies sealed and trauma protected. Archives every single what? The Krell Vex incident alone generated 4,000 individual psychological treatment requests from the Krell Vex. Those fanatics consider dying in battle the highest honor. What could possibly traumatize them? Gerald's manipulators trembled slightly. That's what you need to find out. I've set up a isolated research terminal for you in sublevel 9, triple encrypted connection, no network bleed. And she hesitated. I programmed an automatic session terminator. If you don't check in every 3 hours, it'll wipe your access in. Alert medical. You think I'll need medical? I think, Gerald said slowly, backing toward the exit, that there's a reason the entire galaxy gives Earth a wide berth, and I don't think it's because we're all cowards. The first file made vectors bioluminescent. Patches flicker with confusion. The Krell Vex Dominion, 200 cycles ago, had been at the height of their military expansion. Their war doctrine was simple, brutal, and horrifyingly effective. Overwhelming force, total subjugation, absolute victory. They'd crushed the Pelian resistance in 6 rotations. They made the crossed nebula campaigns look like a military tutorial, and then they'd pointed 300 warships at Earth and just stopped. Vector pulled up the fleet commander's final report. War Captain Geltros, a decorated veteran of 47 successful planetary invasions, had written it himself. The timestamp showed it was filed 3 hours after the fleet's retreat. 3 hours. Most after-action reports took weeks to compile. Initial approach to target planet proceeded within expected parameters. Vector read aloud a habit he developed to keep himself focused. Sensor sweeps confirmed no orbital defenses, no weapons platforms, no shield generators. Population estimated at 6.3 billion. Technological level primitive. Chemical propulsion early. Digital communications fragmented. Political structures recommendation. Standard subjugation protocol estimated. Resistance duration 4 to 6 local rotations. Standard krill of X. Confidence. Vector scrolled down. Landing force deployed to 7 strategic locations across primary land masses. Initial contact with indigenous population proceeded as expected. Humans appeared confused, frightened, disorganized. No military response detected in first 12 minutes. 12 minutes. Vector's eye stalks curled. What could possibly happen in 12 minutes? Then the report continued, and Vector noticed the syntax becoming irregular, less formal. Then the humans started arriving. Not their military, not their governments, just them. They came in their civilian transports, their cars, and trucks carrying personal weapons. So many personal weapons, the report's tone shifted dramatically. Intelligence briefings indicated limited personal armament among civilian population. Intelligence was incorrect. Catastrophically incorrect. Humans emerged from residential structures, carrying enough firepower to outfit a militia battalion from one structure. One private first-class Krill reported. Human female, elderly by their standards, fired upon his squad with a translating modified recreational hunting rifle with custom sighting system and hand-loaded ammunition. She struck 3 soldiers from 700 m from her upper floor window while in IM reading Krill's report verbatim, complaining about property value. Vexter had to read that twice. The report deteriorated further. Landing Zone 3 encountered organized resistance within 18 minutes, not from military forces, from what humans call hobbyists. Tactical analysis identified historical warfare recreation enthusiasts with functional antique weapons, competitive marksmen with customized firearms, engineering enthusiasts with improvised explosives, DIY craftspeople with I cannot adequately translate this. Homemade napalm. Oh no, Vector whispered. Landing Zone 7 requested immediate extraction after encountering a human who claimed to be a weekend warrior and carried enough ammunition for a fun afternoon. Squad leader Vrose reports the single individual suppressed an entire drop pod's worth of soldiers, while translation uncertain, laughing and whooping when questioned why he possessed such firepower. The human responded, Second Amendment baby, which our linguistics AI cannot parse into any coherent threat doctrine. The final paragraph made Vector's feeding tendrils go completely rigid. We were not prepared for a species where civilian distinction is functionally meaningless. Every human is apparently armed, trained, and enthusiastically willing to engage in combat. Retreat ordered after 47 minutes of ground operations. Casualties 132 soldiers. Human casualties 0 confirmed. 3 possible, all from what they termed friendly fire incidents, which they seem to find humorous. Recommendation: avoid Sol system indefinitely. Updating threat database. Earth classification elevated to peer military threat despite technological primitiveness. May the void take mercy on whoever tries next. Vector sat back, his breathing spiracles working overtime. That was 200 cycles ago. Surely things had changed. Since then, he pulled up the next file. With trembling manipulators, the Silthian corporate collective prided themselves on subtlety, where the crowd Vexrot hammers the Silthan brought scalpels, contracts, and very fine print. Their operation 140 cycles ago had been elegantly simple: infiltrate, assess, acquire, exploit. Vexthrot opened the mission briefing with something approaching hope. Maybe the Cathar Vexthrot had just been unlucky. Maybe they'd approached Earth wrong. The Silthan were professional. The operation had deployed 50 infiltration specialists across 12 human population centers. No weapons, no warships, just corporate espionage at its finest. They'd even done their homework, studying human behavior patterns, cultural and norms, legal frameworks. The infiltrators had been given 3 local months to establish cover identities and begin acquiring valuable resources and technology. They'd lasted 9 days. the emergency broadcast. Transcripts where Vexthrot had to admit absolutely fascinating in the worst possible way. Day 3. Infiltrator Kelthas reporting from Texas. Vexthrot read his translator, struggling with the human geographical designation. Local humans are, how do I phrase this? Aggressively friendly. They keep inviting me to barbecues and asking if I want to shoot some cans. I have declined 7 times. They have asked 8 times. I think they're suspicious. Day 4. Same operative attended mandatory barbecue to maintain cover. Humans cook deceased animal flesh over open flames for recreational purposes. When I expressed concern about the primitive food preparation, they laughed and one said, "Wait till you see my smoker. It's got more tech than my truck." I do not understand what automotive specifications have to do with food preparation. Also, they revealed personal firearms as casually as one might discuss the weather. 3 separate humans showed me their carry pieces. I'm supposedly at a social gathering. Vexthrot's bioluminescent patches flickered with something like sympathetic anxiety. Day 6. Infiltrator motion. Arizona location. Mission parameters may be flawed. Attempted to subtly inquire about human defensive capabilities. Elderly human male, estimated 70+ solar rotations, invited me to his gun room. It contained 43 firearms, 43 for one human. When I asked if he was military, he laughed and said he was just getting started on his collection. He then showed me his backup rooms and extraction. The distress calls had come in rapid succession after that. Day 7. Infiltrator Perksnor, Florida region, requesting immediate extraction. Humans here are, there is no other word for it, feral. Witnessed a human wrestle a territorial reptile they call an alligator away from a residential area barehanded while complaining about HOA regulations. When I asked if this was normal, 3 other humans confirmed they had also dealt with gators recently. One showed me scars with pride. Extract me now. Day 8. Infiltrator Belsham, Montana location. The humans know something is wrong. They are too polite, too helpful, too interested in whether I've been hunting before. One asked what I'd do if someone broke into my ship. When I said I'd call authorities, 7 humans looked at me like I'd grown a second head. One patted a bulge at his waist and said, "Out here we are the authorities." I believe this was meant to be reassuring. It was not emergency extraction required. The mission had been scrubbed on day 9 with 43 of 50 operatives reporting psychological unsuitability for continued Earth operations. The final assessment was just 2 sentences. Human civilian population demonstrates militant self-sufficiency incompatible with standard infiltration protocols. Recommend permanent operational exclusion of Sol system. Thor's eyes drooped. The pattern was becoming clearer, and he really didn't like it. The Yarvok file was still warm. Metaphorically speaking, 15 cycles ago. Barely a blip in galactic timescales. Fresh enough that some of the participants were still alive and very much available for questioning. The Yarvok clans were raiders, scavengers, the galaxy's persistent nuisance. They hit soft targets, grabbed what they could, and vanished before real military forces could respond. Earth had looked like the softest target in the galaxy. Vector pulled up the communication Logs and his translator immediately. Flagged the casual confidence in the initial transmissions. Raid Kakenvrak had been leading Yarvak operations for 30 cycles. He'd hit 217 targets. His success rate was 94%. Listen up, you beautiful disasters, Brog's voice crackled through the recording, his species chittering translated into standard galactic. Sensors confirm what intelligence told us. No orbital defenses, no energy shields, no plasma batteries. This little blue marble is practically begging us to take a bite. We're looking at a standard smash and grab. Hit the population centers, grab the shiny stuff, scare the locals, and we're out before they're primitive. Chemical rockets can even fuel up. Laughter echoed through the channel. 23 raiding ships, 450 Yarvak pirates, all veterans of successful operations. Touchdown in 10 minutes, Brog continued. Teams 7 and 9 hitting the coastal cities. Teams 3 and 4, inland population centers. Remember, these humans don't even have proper energy weapons. If they shoot at you, it'll be with those adorable little metal throwers. Your armor will stop anything they've got. This is going to be the easiest payday of your miserable lives. Vector fast-forwarded to the landing timestamp. Then, exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds later, tone of the communications changed to drastically. Captain. Team 7 here. We've got humans approaching our position. A lot of humans. They're in civilian transports, but sir, they're armed. Really armed, so fire a warning shot. Scare them off. That's literally in the standard protocol. Team 7, sir, we fired warning shots. They fired back. They're still coming, and Captain, I don't think these are warning shots on their end. Vexler could hear the confusion in Brog's voice. What do you mean they're still coming? You're in full tactical armor with military grade weapons. They don't seem to care, sir. One of them just got out of his transport. He's carrying something that looks like an oversized metal tube, and wait, is that void? He's got an anti-vehicular. I'm coming. The explosion crackled through the audio feed. Team 7 report. Team 7 still here. Captain, barely. That human just fired a translating RPG at our position. Where does a civilian get a rocket-propelled grenade? He's reloading. He's actually reloading. He's got more. Communications devolved into chaos. Team 9 reported encountering an organized militia that appeared within 6 minutes of landing. Team 3 described civilians in pickup trucks with mounted heavy weapons. Team 4 and Vexter had to replay the section 3 times to believe it. Encountered a human who introduced himself as a military history enthusiast and then proceeded to engage the raiders with what the tactical analysis identified as a fully functional recreated crew-served weapon from human conflict designated World War. Captain, the voice was ragged, panicked, so unlike the confident raiders from 10 minutes earlier. They're coordinating. They've got radio communications. They're flanking us. One of them just called in our position too. Something called the boys from the range. What does that mean? What's a range? Why do they have so many guns? Why are they enjoying this? That last question hung in the air like a curse. Vexter found Brog's final transmission sent from orbit as the raiding party scrambled back to their ships, leaving behind equipment, dignity, and in 3 cases actual crew members who surrendered rather than face more Humans, abort everything, get off that planet now. Intelligence was wrong. So wrong, these aren't civilians. I don't know what they are, but they're not civilians. No civilian population should be this heavily armed, this well coordinated, this enthusiastic about repelling raiders. We lost 17. Crew, 23 injured, and I personally watched human grandmother has to be at least 60 solar rotations old, provide suppressing fire while shouting something about her property and stand your ground laws, updating the charts. Earth is a no-go zone forever. The after-action report included a single line that made Vexthor's feeding tendrils curl, casualties inflicted by Earth's actual military forces, 0. All casualties resulted from encounters with armed civilian population. Vexthor sat in silence, his eye stalks drooping, as the weight of the pattern finally truly settled over him. The humans weren't protected by their military. They were all the military. Vexthor had been staring at the comparative analysis for 6 hours straight, and his optical processors were beginning to protest. He'd cross-referenced every incident, every encounter, every panicked transmission from species that had made the mistake of assuming Earth was vulnerable. The data points aligned with mathematical precision, which somehow made it worse. It doesn't make sense, he muttered to the empty research terminal. No species maintains a permanently militarized civilian population during peacetime. The resource allocation alone would be. Wait, he pulled up Earth's economic data, manufacturing statistics, industrial output, consumer spending patterns. His bioluminescent patches flickered rapidly as the numbers resolved. They're not militarized, Vexthor whispered. It's recreational. They spend discretionary income on weapons for fun. Oh boy, he'd called in Dr. the Hub senior xenopsychologist, a Mandravian whose entire body was essentially one large brain with locomotion appendages. If anyone could explain this insanity, it would be Ralph. So let me see if I understand your question correctly, Ralph said, her thought waves translating through the vocoder with clinical precision. You want to know why humans maintain personal armaments in the absence of immediate threats? Yes, every other species we have centralized defense forces, we have professional militaries. We don't arm everyone and hope it works out. Ralph's frontal lobe pulsed in what might have been amusement. Vexthor, have you studied human history at all? Their evolutionary path, primitive hunters, tribal structures gradually coalescing into larger social units, standard developmental tracks, standard. Oh, you poor naive analyst, humans are persistence predators. Do you understand what that means? They don't have natural weapons, no claws, no venom, no armored hides, so they made weapons and they never stop. Their entire evolutionary success is built on taking things that aren't weapons and making them into weapons. They've been doing it for hundreds of thousands of their years. Vexthor's eyes twitched and twisted in confusion. But they have governments now, laws, social structures, yes, and those governments, at least in many human nations, explicitly guarantee their citizens the right to keep weapons. It's written into their foundational legal documents. Constitutional law. They consider personal armament a fundamental right, like freedom of speech or access to water. That's insane. That's humans Ralph's vocoder crackled with what sounded suspiciously like a sigh, but here's what really should concern you. Go ahead, pull up their entertainment. Media, their recreational activities. Vector did, and immediately wished he hadn't. Competitive shooting sports. Hunting as leisure activity, historical. Warfare reenactments, video games. Simulating combat, movies glorifying. Individual heroism in violent scenarios. Entire subcultures dedicated to survival. Preparedness forums, millions of forums. Discussing calibers, modifications. Tactics, strategies, they practice. Vector said weakly. They practice. Violence as a hobby, now check their actual crime statistics versus their weapon ownership rates, the data made. Vector's optical processors hurt. High weapon ownership doesn't correlate with high violence rates. In fact, in many regions it's inverse. They have the weapons, they have the knowledge, and they just don't use them on each other. Most self-regulation through mutually assured capability. Ralph explained. An armed society where everyone knows everyone else is armed tends toward politeness, and when external threats appear, well, you've read the reports. They all become soldiers. No, Vector. They don't become soldiers, they already were. They just finally have a target everyone agrees on. Vector requested an emergency meeting with Elder Counselor. Thrust 32 hours into his investigation. His findings couldn't wait for the standard reporting cycle. Some revelations demanded immediate attention, preferably before someone else decided Earth looked like an easy target. Thrust's private office was mercifully quiet compared to the council chamber. The Elder Counselor settled into her suspension field, all 7 appendages arranged in a posture that suggested either patience or resignation. Hard to tell with her species. This had better be worth interrupting my rest cycle. Analyst Counselor, I've solved the Earth problem. Vector's eyes talks were rigid with barely controlled anxiety, and it's so much worse than we thought. Worse than an entire planet of armed civilians. Yes, because they're not just armed, they're bored. Thrust's crystalline voice took on a sharp edge. Explain. Vector activated his presentation display, and human faces filled the holographic space. Humans at shooting ranges smiling, humans in camouflage clothing tracking through wilderness laughing, humans modifying weapons in home workshops looking satisfied, humans discussing tactical scenarios in online forums with the kind of enthusiasm most species reserved for mating rituals. Humans have a concept they call hobbies. Vector began recreational activities pursued during leisure time for enjoyment. Most species have similar concepts. We build models, we create art, we play strategic games. Get to the point. Humans' hobbies include military history study, weapons collection and modification, tactical training, survival skills, combat sport, marksmanship competition, and what they term prepping, which is essentially preparing for societal collapse as a recreational activity. Vector's feeding tendrils trembled. Counselor, they practice warfare for fun, and they're good at it because they enjoy it. The display shifted to human media, action movies, first-person shooter games, military fiction novels, historical documentaries about their own wars. Their entertainment industry grosses billions in their currency annually, primarily from content depicting combat, survival, and tactical problem-solving. They have entire television networks dedicated to weapons, hunting, and survival skills. Children play with toy weapons, teenagers compete in marksmanship sports, adults spend weekends their recreational time at firing ranges. Surely their governments regulate this, some try, others encourage it, but here's the critical factor: human civilization has been in relative peace for approximately 80 of their years. No major planetary conflicts, no existential threats, no invasion forces. They've had 8 decades of peace, counselor, and this is a problem because humans evolved through conflict, constant grinding, brutal conflict with their environment, their prey, their predators, and each other. Warfare is their natural state. Peace is the aberration. Vector pulled up historical data. In the last 5,000 years of recorded human history, they estimate only 300 years were completely free of armed conflict somewhere on their planet. 300 out of 5,000. Thros leaned forward. Continue. Now they have peace, prosperity, and advanced technology, but that fundamental nature hasn't changed, so they channel it into hobbies, sports, entertainment. They simulate the challenges their ancestors faced, and when something like the Kralvix or the Yarvok shows up, Thor's bioluminescent patches strobed rapidly. It's not an invasion to them, counselor, it's the most exciting thing that's happened in decades. It's validation for every hour spent at the range, every weekend practicing tactics, every piece of equipment they've collected. Finally, a legitimate target. By the void, the Yarvok communication logs are enlightening. Multiple humans were heard laughing during combat. Laughing, one reportedly said, "This is better than the simulator." Another yelled, "I've been training for this my whole life." They weren't terrified, counselor, they were having the time of their lives. Thros was silent for a long moment. So Earth isn't defended by a military force? No, counselor, it's defended by approximately 4 billion potential combatants who have been waiting their entire lives for something interesting to happen. The full galactic council chamber had never felt so oppressively silent. Vector stood at the central podium, his presentation floating above him in damning holographic detail, while 300 representatives from across known space stared in varying states of disbelief, horror, and what he suspected might be existential dread. To summarize, Thor said, his vocoder steady despite his trembling manipulators, humans do not distinguish between civilian and military capability the way we do. The concept is for them largely theoretical. Counselor Jarvex, whose species had pacified their entire home system through diplomatic means, raised a tentacle. Surely you're exaggerating. No civilization can sustain that level of militant readiness without constant warfare. That's exactly the point, counselor. They're not sustaining readiness, they're pursuing entertainment. Vector pulled up a statistical overlay. Estimated 400 million humans own firearms. That's approximately 5% of their population. But here's the critical detail. Ownership is concentrated in regions with specific cultural attitudes toward self-reliance. In some human nation-states, ownership rates exceed 40% of households. The chamber erupted in shocked vocalizations. Please, there's more. Vector highlighted a new data stream. Those are just registered firearms. Humans have an extensive black market homemade weapons manufacturing, and what they call inherited arsenals, passed down through family units. Actual numbers are likely double the official statistics. Counselor Prin's voice cut through the noise. What about their government? Surely centralized authorities restrict this. Some attempt regulation, others actively encourage it. But the truly terrifying part isn't the weapons counselors, it's the competence. Vector pulled up training statistics. Humans spend an estimated 30 billion of their currency units annually on ammunition alone, not for military purposes. For practice, they go to facilities called ranges and fire thousands of rounds, refining their accuracy for recreation. A junior counselor from the Pelion system spoke up, her translator crackling. But without tactical training, without military discipline, surely they'd be disorganized in actual combat. Vector's eyes talked drooped. That's what the Yarvok thought right up until they encountered humans who'd spent years studying military tactics as a hobby. Humans have access to thousands of their own military history. They read about it voluntarily. They debate strategies on communication networks. They play simulation games that teach squad-level tactics. Some participate in organized recreational activities where they practice small unit maneuvers with non-lethal weapons just for fun. He pulled up footage from something called airsoft and paintball competitions. Humans in tactical gear executing flanking maneuvers, using cover and concealment, communicating with hand signals. This is their idea of a fun weekend, Vexter said quietly. Thrax's voice was grim. Show them the cultural analysis. Vexter complied, and Mahala displayed filled with human media, movies where individuals defeated armies, books celebrating warrior cultures, songs glorifying defiance and resistance, video games where players controlled soldiers, tanks, aircraft, entire armies. Their most popular entertainment involves simulated combat. Their highest-grossing media franchises feature wars, fighting, tactical challenges. They have a saying, si vis pacem para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. Except humans took that philosophy and made it a recreational activity. Avesh's tone counselors thought waves translated through her vocoder, shaking with disbelief. Are you telling this council that Earth's primary defense strategy is that their civilians are too dangerous to attack? No, counselor. Vexter met her optical sensors directly. I'm telling you, their civilians don't exist, not in any sense we'd recognize. There are only humans who haven't been given a reason to fight. Yet the silence that followed was absolute, and Vexter added, because the council needed to understand the full scope. They consider this normal. Vexter squared his posture, manipulators gripping his data pad with a firmness that surprised even himself. The weight of 300 cycles of galactic intelligence protocol rested on what he was about to recommend. My official assessment is as follows, he began, his vocoder cutting through the chambers. Stunned silence. Earth should be immediately reclassified from primitive low threat to extreme threat. Do not engage under any circumstances. The chamber exploded. Counselors shouted, chittered, harmonized, and electromagnetic pulsed their objections simultaneously. Thraw slammed her appendage down 3 times before order reluctantly returned. That classification is reserved for species with planet-killing weaponry. Counselor Jarvix protested. They have That too, Vexter replied flatly. Thousands of thermonuclear warheads. Enough to sterilize their own planet. Several times over, they built them, pointed them at each other for decades, and somehow showed enough restraint not to use them. That level of armed tension, without mutual annihilation, suggests a species-wide discipline that, frankly, terrifies me more than the weapons themselves. Bren leaned forward. Your recommendation specifically, Vexter pulled up his final report. Establish exclusion zone around the Sol system. Minimum 5 light years. Any vessel approaching Earth must transmit intentions clearly and wait for explicit permission. No military operations, no corporate expeditions, no raiding parties. We add Earth to the galactic treaty as a protected system, not because they need protection, but because we need protection from the consequences of provoking them. This is absurd, a junior counselor muttered. This is survival, Vexter snapped. Every species that's tested Earth has retreated. The Kralvex lost 132 soldiers to what humans dismissively call rednecks and weekend warriors. The Silthan abandoned a multi-cycle intelligence operation because humans casually showed off personal arsenals at social gatherings. The Yarvok professional raiders ran from grandmothers and hobbyists' thaws. Crystal and voice rang out. The council will vote all in favor of analyst Vexter's recommendations. The vote was unanimous, so ordered. Earth is hereby designated exclusion zone Omega 7. Threat level extreme. Throst paused, her appendages arranging themselves in what her species used to signal irony. And let the record show we've made this designation based entirely on encounters with their civilian population. We still have no reliable intelligence on what their actual military forces are capable of. Vexter's feeding tendrils went rigid. He'd been so focused on the civilian incidents, he'd completely forgotten to investigate Earth's professional soldiers. Oh no, he whispered. Dale Hutchins wiped down his workbench in his garage in suburban Ohio, carefully organizing his reloading equipment. Tuesday nights were for brass prep, Thursdays for actual reloading, and weekends, well, weekends were for the range. He'd been at it for 30 years, ever since his dad taught him. Just a nice, relaxing hobby. His neighbor, Patricia, waved from across the fence. Hey Dale, you going to the competition shoot on Saturday? Wouldn't miss it. You bringing that new rifle you were telling me about? You bet. Custom trigger, free floating barrel. The whole setup cost me a fortune, but my groupings are finally where I want them. Nice. I'm still working on my long-range game. Can't seem to get consistent hits past 800 yards. There's a clinic next month at the range. Former military sniper teaching the basics. You should sign up. Already did. They chatted for a few more minutes about barrel twist rates and ammunition grain weights with the casual enthusiasm most people reserved for discussing their favorite recipes. Just another Tuesday evening in a quiet neighborhood where absolutely nothing of galactic significance was happening. 3 states over, a 17-year-old named Kevin was winning a regional marksmanship competition while his parents cheered from the stands. In Montana, a retired teacher named Helen was cleaning her grandfather's rifle collection, each piece a working piece of history she maintained meticulously. In Texas, a software engineer named Rajesh was teaching his kids gun safety, using the same patient instruction his own father had used, treating the lesson with the seriousness it deserved. Across the planet, in millions of homes, humans maintained their equipment, practiced their skills, studied their history, and never once considered that the galaxy had classified them as an extreme threat. They were just people with hobbies, pursuing interests, enjoying their freedoms, in orbit completely undetected by Earth's primitive sensors. A galactic monitoring station kept its passive watch. The crew rotated every 30 cycles because, as the station commander explained to newcomers, watching humans be normal is somehow more unsettling than watching them be dangerous. And somewhere in deep space, Lector finished his supplementary report on Earth's actual military capabilities. He read it once, twice, then encrypted it with the highest security classification available. Some things he decided the galaxy was better off not knowing. The file's title read simply, Addendum. What happens when you give these people actual training? He marked it clearance level Omega, read only if absolutely necessary, psychological counseling recommended after review. Then he requested a transfer to the outer rim. Cataloging space fungus suddenly sounded wonderfully peaceful.